Welcome to this presentation on VCE Legal Studies. In this video, we will analyse the program, look at how well applied learning theories are used, and explore ways that we can teach this effectively while arriving at some recommendations that we can make. This area of study looks at the Australian legal system, particularly the criminal justice system, civil justice system, and how laws are made and reformed in Australia. We will base this on a school in the inner suburbs of Melbourne with completion rates, literacy and numeracy higher than state average. 40% of students speak English as an additional language, with the majority being Chinese, and school laptops are provided with restricted internet access. Finally, the students come from a mixed socioeconomic background. So how well does VCE Legal Studies demonstrate applied learning? We will look at this through Unit 1 of the study design, which mostly focuses on criminal law. First, we will look at the design of the program. Bloom's taxonomy can be seen throughout the learning objectives, where students are asked to describe the law, explain how it works, and then finally evaluate how effective it is. We can also see constructive alignment throughout the study design, as it is suggested to teachers to explicitly teach the knowledge that's required, or at least embed it in their learning activities. This example learning activity shows how students need to understand criminal intent and also the criminal acts, which forms part of Outcome 2 in Unit 1. Let's now look at the learning theories behind this study design. VCA mandates that teachers use cases within the last 4 years, which suggests that they would like the content to be contextualized to the current landscape for students. This also supports Kolb's experiential learning cycle, where students need to relate their learnings to their current experiences, such as following school rules or wearing seatbelts. The learning activities also tie very well with Piaget's learning theories, as it's assumed that students are within the formal operational stage. The learning activities are also quite independent in nature, and debates are used to help students accommodate new information through other students. Here are 2 extracts from the learning activities, and it shows the uses of Kolb's experiential learning, where we simulate the environment for students to learn, and also Piaget's theories on simulating new information through current experiences. But how well does the content differentiate for our diverse learners? While laws can be quite rigid in nature, study design does recognise that they can be quite broad in application. This means teachers can contextualise the content and provide personalised instruction through differentiating the content. This can be based on culture, their interests, how they like to learn, or their experiences. Study design also recognises differentiation through process, where students in the same class can take different tasks to reach their learning objectives. Now finally, how well does the program use ICT? There is mention of students using certain websites to find information relevant to their studies, and also to use technology to communicate through, for example, a multimedia presentation. This means technology is being used to fetch information, organise that information, and then communicate that information. While law can be quite dry and removed from the context, it is suggested to use multimedia to help students further engage and experience the topics that they're studying. We'll now look at an example. On this suggested website, students are asked to view the facts of a case through testimony, and also looking at the arguments of both sides to decide on how they want a sentence.
My cruise was still on, and I must have been travelling at 110 km an hour when I hit the bollards.
Consider the purpose for sentencing Richard. Are you wanting to punish him? Deter others from committing similar crimes?
Your Honour, Richard's been a truck driver for over 20 years and has a very good work history.
As you might have noticed, presenting the information in this manner allows students to get closer to experiencing the content that they're learning. So based on what's provided, how could this program be delivered effectively? We will look at how we can use collaborative learning when appropriate, facilitate debates to be more effective, differentiate further for our culturally diverse learners, and also further use of ICT. Studying law has typically been an individual pursuit. However, collaborative learning can be used to support our learning outcomes. For example, situating students in their zone of proximal development and using the teacher or technology as the more knowledgeable other, and creating a constructivist learning environment through inquiry-based learning, where we identify the problem first and then look for the information to solve. This is in contrast to the study design, where students would first look for the information and then be presented with a problem. Debates in legal studies can also be effective or problematic for a number of reasons. Firstly, Piaget identified egocentrism in the earlier stages of development, and is not to say this would not be present in the classroom and impede upon learning objectives. Debates are also a form of controlled conflict, and this might clash with cultural values, or it may trigger anxiousness upon certain students experiencing distress. Egocentrism and being unable to consider another student's views may not align with outcome 1 on social cohesion, and would not present students with a complete understanding of the law. In cases like this, we can ask students to rephrase another person's opinion in their own words, or argue for the opposite side to get a better understanding of the opposition. We would also need to differentiate further for our diverse cohort. In this classroom, debates may not be fully received by our students with a Chinese background, as their cultural values tend to favour harmony and social well-being over disputes. Text representation of laws can also be problematic if English literacy is not at a certain level, and the nature of how Australia's laws were formed is actually steeped in colonialism, which may conflict with certain cultural views such as First Nations people. To better contextualise the learning for these students, we can have learners choose a case of personal interest for them and create individual learning contracts to where assessments are modified to suit the learner's interests. We can also present information through multiple ways through universal design for learning. When using ICT technology to deliver the study, we do need to recognise that ICT is integral to legal studies, as it is not feasible to carry all the statutes and case law in print. This means students from a lower socioeconomic background would need assistance with acquiring a laptop. Students with computer literacy needs would also need additional support, and we could further use technology to increase experiential learning, like with the example seen before. We'll also look at ways to further improve learner outcomes. Firstly, with the use of the solo taxonomy, especially the higher levels, increase the use of functional knowledge within the learning activities and the outcomes. Integrate legal perspectives from other cultures and countries to cater to the diverse cohorts, and also reduce the burden of declarative knowledge with assistive technology such as AI. The majority of the learning activities focus on finding the law, remembering the law, but quite little of it is focused on applying the law, but also applying the law into complex scenarios, whether hypothetical or real. We'll look at doing this with the solo taxonomy, where we introduce cases which intersect with multiple laws or even multiple issues. For practical challenges, if we are restricted to the Bloom's taxonomy due to curriculum, we could shift the content to a more upside down triangle, where more of the focus is on higher order thinking skills. However, we do need to recognise the nature of the law, where many tasks will require a level of comprehension to understand how issues would relate to certain laws. However, tasks that can be approached through apprehension and experiences would be encouraged. For example, above, understanding the scope and the elements of the law would be suitable for declarative knowledge. However, interpreting a case, looking at the implications from the decisions, would be more suitable for functional knowledge. While using AI in the current classroom today would be controversial and met with challenges, it is reiterated that it would be used to assist in students' thinking and not to replicate it. This allows the learner to think more strategically, creatively, and to engage with higher order thinking skills. Students can also use AI to cross-check for human error. When students traditionally learn about the law, they usually follow a presentation led by the teacher. They may later read case summaries from legal firms, and later on engage with the case transcript itself or the statutes. Because transcripts and statutes can be quite long and written in language not accessible for a learner, we will look at how AI can simplify this process to allow learners to better understand the facts of a case. For example, a man in Melbourne was charged with the murder of his wife, and students would need to typically read case transcripts from the courtroom. They would need to read decisions being ruled to learn more about the case. AI can simplify this process by collating that information for students and presenting it to them in a manner that is very easily digestible. The student can then ask further questions about the case. For example, why did the man plead guilty during the investigation? This path of questioning would further personalize the learning experience for the learner and allow them to ask more critical questions about the content as opposed to spending their time trying to remember facts of a case. In this particular case, the prosecution could prove the criminal intent. However, they could not prove the criminal act, which prolonged the investigation. Because the body was not found for 8 months, there was not significant evidence beyond reasonable doubt, which could lead students to ask, why did it take 8 months for the body to be found? Did something slow the investigation down? Which could lead students to ask more practical questions about how the legal system works in Australia. While this does assist learners in their information retrieval, we do need to be cautious that it does not replace their learning abilities and their learning skills. This could be done by schools programming their own AI applications, where learners are not given the answers, but instead led down a learning journey, personalised to their own needs. This all depends on whether schools can adopt a positive view of the future for technology, and whether our paradigm shifts can keep up with the change of technology. As we went further into outer space, the first mention of cyborgs was found in the 1960s, where we started to realize there were unknown knowns, that technology had already been integrated into our lives under our very noses. Perhaps this might hint that AI is also becoming a part of ICT, and to better meet the nationally agreed employability skills of technology, it's possible that AI may become more relevant. In summary, studying law does lend itself to Piaget's learning theories, and this particular study design was weighted quite heavily towards lower level thinking skills in the Bloom's taxonomy. As Australian law is contextualised to Australian history, this might not accommodate all learners of a cultural background. To improve the learning program, we looked at using collaborative learning, greater differentiation for our learners, more high-level thinking skills, and assistive technology such as AI. Thank you very much.